Other than a few exceptions, the top ATP tennis players have pretty much maintained their positions atop the rankings while still giving fresher faces a piece of the pie as well. However, some men were on the outside looking in this year, and today we're going to be looking at 10 players who dipped a bit in 2021. Kicking us off at number 10 is Diego Schwartzman. Despite 2020 being shortened due to COVID, Schwartzman arguably had the best season of his career thus far, reaching his first major semifinal, his first Masters 1000 final, and qualifying for the ATP finals for the first time. Even though he didn't win a title, he earned tremendous bragging rights, defeating Rafael Nadal at Rome for his first ever win over the Spaniard. Now, transitioning a year later, I first want to preface that Diego didn't have a bad 2021. It just could have been a lot better, and I feel like his game did decline a bit. In Melbourne, the Argentine became one of Aslan Karatsev's first big victims, losing to the Russian in the third round. Diego did manage to win a title in his country during the South American swing, not dropping a set en route to the Buenos Aires trophy. However, he was unable to have any other decent clay results until the French, going 2-5. He did take advantage of a pretty favorable draw in Paris and played strong tennis before falling to Nadal in the quarters. Afterward, Schwartzman had a so-so summer, losing relatively early at Wimbledon, the Olympics, and other US Open lead-up events. Schwartzman once again looked stronger at the actual major, reaching the round of 16 in New York. However, he suffered a rather surprising fifth set loss to 117th ranked Baltic van de Zandschulp. Diego was dealt an even worse loss immediately afterward, losing to unranked Daniil Ostapenko in straights during a Davis Cup tie with Belarus. He did manage to recover pretty well from that setback, reaching the quarters of Indian Wells and the finals of Antwerp. As I mentioned earlier, Diego didn't have that notable of a decline, falling just 4 spots in the rankings. However, when you actually look at his matches, Diego has struggled a lot with high-ranked players, only earning 1 top 10 win all year. Meanwhile, in 2020 alone, he beat 3 top 5 players. I feel like he's also become one of those guys that the top 50-ish players truly feel like they have a chance against. At number 9 is Aussie Alex de Minaur. De Minaur's been a player who's had a relatively constant steady rise for the past few years now. 2019 was his breakout season as he claimed 3 titles and held an incredible 41-20 win-loss record. Injuries did hurt the young Australian a bit in 2020, but he still managed to go deep at a major for the first time after making the last 8 in New York. Now, 2021 actually started really well for de Minaur as he won a title in Antalya the first week of the year. After suffering respectable losses in Melbourne, Alex underwent a 4-match losing streak. He didn't do much at all during the clay court swing, ending it with a second-round loss at Roland Garros. De Minaur had some of his best showings during the grass court lead-ups, reaching the semis at Queen's before taking the Eastbourne title. He was touted as a potential dark horse for Wimbledon, but lost in the first round to Sebastian Korda. He also lost in the opening stage of his next 5 of 6 events. Alex looked solid at Indian Wells, nearly beating Tsitsipas in the round of 16. He didn't carry any momentum from that breakthrough though, losing early in his last 3 tournaments. I don't think Alex had a terrible season, but it wasn't that great. He was far too inconsistent with his results and didn't do well at any of the majors, which is a big disappointment. Perhaps we'll see something big at the beginning of the year as he'll be playing at home where he usually excels. The 8th player here who I feel dropped off in 2021 is Chile's Cristian Garin. Like de Minaur, Garin had one of his biggest breakthroughs in 2019, winning 2 titles, both on clay of course. He continued his clay conquest in 2020, winning back-to-back titles at Cordoba and Rio. At the start of this year, Cristian hurt his wrist, sidelining him for the Australian Open. After beginning his season with some pretty ugly straight-set losses to lower-ranked players, the Chilean picked up his 5th tour title at home in Santiago. Once again, he failed to replicate this success in the bigger clay court events, but did manage to make the quarters of Madrid, beating Medvedev along the way. Garin, aided by favorable draws, had his 2 best showings at slams back-to-back, reaching the 4th rounds at both Roland Garros and Wimbledon. That was the end of Cristian's highs this season as he went 5-8 to close 2021. First, giving credit to the Chilean, he did have that win over Daniil in Madrid, and made the second week of the Channel Slam, not beating anyone inside the top 80. So good for him, I guess. In all seriousness though, Garin is the worst player inside the top 20, and he really shouldn't be in there. He actually ends the season 5 spots higher than where he started, but that's mostly due to the ATP's frozen ranking point system. He's 34 in the ATP race, and that's where he belongs in the rankings. Up next is another player whose ranking is perhaps a bit inflated, and that's Frenchman Gael Monfils. The pandemic probably hurt Monfils the most, as prior to it, he won back-to-back titles at Montpellier and Rotterdam, and narrowly beat Djokovic for the first time. When the tour resumed, Monfils lost all 4 of his remaining matches for the 2020 season. He opened the new year with 2 more consecutive losses, but after his Australian Open defeat, he broke down and announced that he'd be taking a break from the tour. During his time off, Monfils got back together with, proposed to, and ultimately married WTA star Elina Svitolina. I think Gael's marriage to Elina boosted his career once more, as during the US Open series, he won consecutive matches at 3 tournaments in a row. He came so close to reaching the second week at the US Open, losing a tight 5-setter to Jannik Sinner. A month later, Monfils reached his first final since 2020 at Sofia, once again falling to Sinner. The Frenchman closed out his season with round of 16 losses at Indian Wells and Paris. Gael blamed many of his post-COVID struggles on there being no crowds to feed energy from. I think he honestly forgot how he wanted to play after the long layoff, as he reverted back to that passive yet inconsistent way of playing. Monfils did get better towards the end of this year, but it wasn't enough to save his season, as he was 47 in the ATP race, despite actually being ranked 26 spots higher. Moving on, taking the 6th spot is Brazil's Thiago Seyboth Wild. Wild was touted as a next-gen player to watch for 2021, after claiming his debut title at Santiago. The then 19-year-old had only earned 1 tour main draw match victory prior to the event. However, Seyboth Wild was unable to build on his big breakthrough, some in part due to the COVID stoppage. Thiago stood out mainly because of his huge forehand and overall athleticism and firepower. He seemed to lose much of that and just seems really erratic. This has practically prevented him from being able to compete in any big tour events, only earning 1 main draw match win all year. Seyboth Wild was also accused of domestic violence by his ex-girlfriend, which of course has its implications. Thiago's Santiago win brought a lot of attention on the young player, especially in Brazil, where he was touted as the country's next big tennis hope. We'll see in 2022 if he can manage the increased responsibilities and expectations, and whether he can finally play into his potential. Starting our top 5 is Miomir Kecmanovic of Serbia. Kecmanovic has been on many people's radars after reaching the Indian Wells quarters as a qualifier back in 2019. Later that season, he reached his first tour final at the Antalya Open. The Serbian then had another strong showing at a Masters event, making the Cincinnati round of 16, where he beat Auger Aliassime and Zverev. After that performance, he cracked the top 50 and continued his rise in 2020, making a couple of 250 semis near the beginning. He eventually went a few better, claiming his maiden ATP title at Kitzbühel. Miomir looked to build on his career milestone in 2021, but the season didn't go as planned. Being brutally honest, his season was piss poor, as he only managed to get 1 win over an opponent ranked higher than him. At the beginning of the season, he lost pretty handily to higher-ranked opponents, but started to fare better towards the latter part. Miomir just couldn't take his opportunities and win the tight matches. His confidence was stifled basically the entire year, so I think the 22-year-old just needs to learn how to actually close out those big matches. Kecmanovic is currently ranked 69th, but was 97th in the ATP race. He held a grim 14-26 win-loss record. Taking the 4th spot here is another Frenchman, Benoit Paire. Like Monfils, Paire played some of his best tennis in 2019 and in the early part of 2020, but since the pandemic he struggled to maintain top form. His reasons are pretty much the same as Gael's, with the lack of crowd presence making it difficult for him to get fully engaged. Benoit lost in the first round in 8 of his first 9 tournaments of the year, often falling in straight sets. The flashy Frenchman has made more headlines for what he said off the court than his performance on it. Paire blamed his first round exit at the Australian Open on the shameful quarantine conditions, describing the tournament as crap, ish, and grotesque. Then, after falling to Stefano Tsitsipas in 68 minutes at Acapulco, Per shockingly told reporters that he intentionally aims to lose early in events so he can make his easy money, then enjoy the fruits of his non-labor. Per also told L'Equipe, "Tennis is not my priority at the moment. Getting out of the bubble is the only goal I have at every tournament. I arrive, I take some money, and I go to the next tournament. I do my job." Benoit also suffered a pretty wild loss to 410th ranked young Dane Holger Rune, claiming just 5 games. Per took to Instagram to explain his poor performance, saying, "Playing in closed stadiums without any atmosphere isn't why I play. Having to stay at a hotel or club and be forbidden to go out without risking a fine, where's the pleasure of traveling? Tennis has become a tasteless job. I need time to adapt to the pseudo ATP circuit, but I will make the effort to try to just rediscover the pleasure of playing tennis." After finally claiming a win in Madrid, Per went on to have a 7-match losing streak that ended at Hamburg, where he reached the quarterfinals. From that point forward, it looked like he actually started to care about his tennis, which translated into a quarterfinal showing at Cincinnati. Per unfortunately failed to capitalize off that run and ended the season almost how he started it, with poor uncharacteristic losses. Benoit's win-loss record truly speaks for itself, and the fact that his ATP race standing is 85th shows you where his level has been at all year. Taking the third spot on our countdown is Canadian Vasek Pospisil. After having a promising rise between 2013 to 2015, Vasek's career has been somewhat of a roller coaster, but with a lot more lows. After undergoing back surgery in 2019, the Canadian looked to be back to his former peak, making consistent appearances in the latter stages of big tournaments and winning back-to-back challenger titles. In 2020, he reached his second ever ATP final at Montpellier, losing to Monfils. He kept his momentum post-shutdown too, reaching the second week of the US Open where he beat 2 top 20 players. Then, about 2 months later, he reached another final, this one at Sofia, falling just short of his debut trophy to Jannik Sinner. Vasek had a rough start to 2021, and in his defense, he had some pretty tough draws. I think all this boiled over at the Miami Open, where he won on a mid-match tirade against the ATP Tour chief Andrea Gaudenzi during his opening round loss to Mackie McDonald. Pospisil smashed his racket, hit a ball out of the court, and shouted at the umpire. He then started going after Gaudenzi, revealing the chairman screamed at him during a meeting for his efforts to create his own players' union, the PTPA. Vasek apologized for his actions immediately, but since that outburst, he didn't play for 3 months, skipping the entire clay swing. He didn't really do much at all since returning, his best result being a quarterfinal showing at Eastbourne. Pospisil was also winless when he played challengers to close his regular season out. Like for many other players here, the stats explain it all, from the low ranking in ATP race standing to the poor win-loss record. Vasek did manage to score a win over Fabio Fognini at the US Open, but he's also struggled a lot over the past few seasons, so I don't think there's any true good standout moment for the 31-year-old here. Maybe he should just let the PTPA drama go and focus on his day job. Second on the countdown is Belgium's David Goffin. Goffin has been a consistent figure within the top 5 for at least 5 years now, and he's always just been solid, generally beating the players he's supposed to. This year, however, has been a bit different. Goffin suffered 2 opening round exits at Melbourne, both being to opponents ranked outside the top 100. He rebounded nicely though and won his 5th career title at Montpellier. David then lost early in his next 4 tournaments before making the quarterfinals at Monte Carlo, beating Zverev in the process. Afterwards, Goffin had some pretty weird losses, falling to the bonus at Rome 2-1, before losing to Alias Benedet and Lorenzo Musetti in straight sets at Lyon and Paris. Goffin looked stronger at Halle, where he was steamrolling Corentin Moutet before slipping on the grass and injuring his ankle early in the second set. He continued to play on, but ultimately retired from the match and withdrew from Wimbledon. Goffin returned to action for the US Open Series, losing in the opening rounds in Cincinnati and New York in straight sets, both to players ranked outside the top 60. Soon after his US Open exit, David told fans that he'd be missing the rest of the season due to an ongoing knee injury. Goffin finishes 2021 ranked 39th, which is his lowest year-end ranking in 8 years. His ATP race and win-loss record accurately demonstrates Goffin's struggle too. The newlywed does look to come back stronger in 2022, in hopes of the knee issue being a thing of the past. Before I reveal the top spot on this countdown, I want to give some honorable mentions of players whose rankings have taken a tumble due to injuries sustained much earlier in the year. First, Milos Raonic, who took multiple hiatuses due to calf and right leg injuries. He started his 2021 ranked 14th and is currently 70th. Borna Coric ended his season after Rotterdam, undergoing shoulder surgery. The Croat was ranked 25th at the beginning of the year, but ends at 73rd. Then Stanislas Wawrinka also had to miss the final 3 majors of the year, needing surgery on his left foot. He started 18th and is now 82nd. Now, our number 1 spot really shouldn't be any surprise, and that's Austria's Dominic Thiem. After years of knocking on the door, Dominic finally had his major breakthrough at the 2020 US Open, claiming his maiden slam title. That same year, he reached the Australian Open finals and made the French Open quarters plus ATP Finals final, despite having such a big end to his season. Thiem's extended 2020 did catch up to him this year though, looking depleted physically in Melbourne. Dominic also underperformed during the Middle East swing and suffered a lopsided loss to Lloyd Harris in the Dubai first round. Following that defeat, the Austrian made the decision to skip the first 2 Masters 1000 events, saying that he needed extra time to reset, regroup, and regain his form. Thiem discussed his struggles as a traveling player during COVID, plus his life changes since becoming a major champion. He talked about wanting to build a life outside of tennis, especially now that he's done all this work to accomplish that long-awaited goal. Domi returned to action at the Madrid Open, where he lost in the semis to eventual champion Alexander Zverev. Thiem seemed very pleased with his run, believing things would only get better as the clay season progressed. However, Dominic was in for a letdown, as he fell in the round of 16 at Rome, got clobbered in the opening round of Lyon, and then blew a 2-set-to-love lead in the opening round of Roland Garros. Thiem blamed his losses on a mere drop in form, believing his shots lacked significant power and depth. Dominic returned to Mallorca to play a 250 event ahead of Wimbledon. He looked solid versus Adrian Manarino, but while up 5-2, the Austrian felt a sharp pain in his wrist and had to retire. The issue turned out to be really serious, as he had to wear a splint for 5 weeks, preventing him from playing Wimbledon. While he was working his way back, Domi actually hurt his wrist again and ultimately called it quits for the rest of the year. Don't get me wrong, 2021 was a good year for tennis, but the men's game just felt off, and Thiem not being himself explains that feeling. Currently, Domi is pain-free, but recently withdrew from the Australian Open as he doesn't feel like he's where he wants to be game-wise. He plans on returning for the South American spring swing. That's it for this video, and let me know your thoughts on the players I included here. Also, comment below if you feel that there are other players who fell off in 2021 that I failed to mention. Make sure you all subscribe and click the notification bell so you're notified whenever I post my best matches of 2021 videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Grand Slam Tennis News Today.